Ancient Greece. Origins of the universe. Uranus and Gaia. In the empty beginning, only Nyx existed, which was a bird with black wings. The bird laid a golden egg, and she patiently sat on it for a long, long time. Life began in the egg, and finally Eros, the god of love, rose. Half of the shell became sky, and the other half became earth. Eros named the sky Uranus and the earth Gaia. Then Eros made Uranus and Gaia fall in love. Uranus and Gaia had children and grandchildren. Some of them became afraid of the power of their own children. To protect himself, Cronus swallowed his children when they were infants. However, his wife Rhea became sad and hid their youngest child. She gave Cronus a rock wrapped in clothes, which he swallowed thinking it was his son. Once the child Zeus reached manhood, his mother taught him how to trick his father in order to give up his brothers and sisters. Once this was accomplished, the children fought a mighty war against their father. After much fighting, the younger generation won. With Zeus as their leader, they began to furnish Gaia with life and Uranus with stars. Sacred spaces and the beliefs of the religion. The ancient Greek sanctuaries were built in particular places. These places had a geometric link between them. Temples were dedicated to the worship of the gods. They were found only in appropriate places and not randomized. Sacred sites were also defined in the places of eldest. Located in the west of Athens is the ancient site of the Pan-Hellenic sanctuary of Delphi. The complex of buildings, which includes the Temple of Apollo, is where the oracle sat. The sacred Carycian cave and the Castalian spring is nestled in the forested slopes and rocky crags on the south of the sacred mountain called Parnassus. In Greece, the Phaedriades were the pair of cliffs located on the southern slope of Mount Parnassus, which enclosed the sacred site of Delphi, the center of the Hellenic world. The site is described as the narrow valley of the Pleistus, formed by Parnassae and Mount Surface. Between them rises the Castalian spring. Even today, at noontime, the rock's faces reflect a dazzling glare. The Castalian spring in the ravine between the Phaedriades at Delphi is where all comers to Delphi, the contestants in the Pythian games, and especially suppliants who come to consult the oracle, stop to wash their hair. The Greek god Zeus was born in a cave on Mount Ida on the island of Crete. When the caves were excavated, they were filled with votive offerings. Sacred caves are found throughout Greece, such as the Carycian cave at Delphi, which is sacred to the nymph Caricia. The Greeks worshipped unwrought stones instead of images. There were 30 square stones near a spring sacred to Hermes Pharaoh in Greece. In ancient Greece, the preeminent god of the mountain was Zeus, who was born and brought up on a mountain. He was allegedly born in a cave, the sacred cave on Mount Ida on Crete. He who ruled supreme on Mount Olympus was a god of rain and lightning. Therefore, mountains were sacred to the Greeks. Sacred springs were enshrined by the ancient Greeks, who erected artificial basins and placed icons of the deity or deities nearby. Goddesses and nymphs were connected with certain rivers, springs, and wells. Argos, sacred to the goddess Hera. Corinth, sacred to the god Poseidon and the goddess Aphrodite. Cytherea, sacred to the goddess Aphrodite. Delos, sacred to the god Apollo. Delphi, home of oracle of Apollo. Ephesus, sacred to the goddess Artemis. Rhodes sacred to the god Helios, and Samos sacred to the goddess Hera. Ancient Greek gods and goddesses. Married to Hera, Zeus is the lord of the sky, the rain god. His weapon is a thunderbolt, which he hurls at those who displease him. Poseidon is the brother of Zeus, the god of the sea and worshipped by seamen. He married Amphitrite. His weapon is a trident which can shake the earth and shatter any object. He is second most powerful god. Hades is the brother of Zeus, god of the underworld, ruling over the dead. He is also the god of wealth due to the precious metals mined from the earth. Hades has a helmet that makes him invisible. Wife of Hephaestus, goddess of love, desire and beauty, Aphrodite rises from the foam of the waves of the sea, enchanting anyone who sees her and enticing feelings of love wherever she goes. The myrtle is her tree, the dove, the swan, and the sparrow her birds. Sister of Zeus, goddess of the home. Each city had a public hearth sacred to Hestia, where the fire was never allowed to go out. Married to Zeus and is his sister too, Hera is the goddess of marriage and childbirth. Her sacred animals are the cow and the peacock. Ares was the son of Zeus and Hera, god of war. His bird is the vulture, his animal is the dog. Son of Zeus and Leto, Apollo is the god of music, playing a golden lyre, the archer fast shooting with a silver bow, the god of healing who taught man medicine, the god of light, the god of truth who cannot speak a lie. His tree was the laurel, the cow his bird, the dolphin his animal. Daughter of Zeus and Leto, her twin brother is Apollo. Artemis is the huntsman of the gods. She is the protector of the young. Like Apollo, she hunts with silver arrows. Athena is the daughter of Zeus. She sprung full-grown in armor from his forehead, thus has no mother. Goddess of the city, handicrafts and agriculture, she invented the brindle, which permitted man to tame horses, the trumpet, the flute, the pot, the rake, the plough, the yoke, the ship, and the chariot. Her tree is the olive, the owl is her bird. Son of Zeus and Maia, he is the messenger of the gods, he is the fastest of the gods. He wears winged sandals, a winged hat, and carries a magic wand. Hermes is the god of thieves and god of commerce. He is the guide for the dead to go to the underworld. Son of Zeus and Hera, his wife is Aphrodite. He is the only god to be physically ugly. He is also lame. Accounts as to how he became lame vary. Some say that Hera, upset by having an ugly child, flung him from Mount Olympus into the sea, breaking his legs. Once he took Hera's side in an argument with Zeus, and Zeus flung him off Mount Olympus. Hephaestus is the god of fire and the forge. He uses a volcano as his forge. He is the patron god of both smiths and weavers. Principal beliefs. The Greeks believed in an underworld where the spirits of the dead went after death. If a funeral was never performed, it was commonly believed that the person's spirit would never reach the underworld and so would haunt the world as a ghost forever. There were various views of the underworld and the idea changed over time. One of the most widespread areas of the underworld was known as Hades. This was ruled over by a god, a brother of Zeus, who was called Hades. His realm was originally called the place of Hades. Another realm called Tartarus was the place where the damned were thought to go, a place of torment. A third realm, Elysium, was a pleasant place where the virtuous dead and initiates in the mystery cults were said to dwell. In the early Mycenaean religion, all the dead went to Hades, just as in early Judaism, all the dead went to Sheol. Sacred texts. Hesiod's Theology and Works and Days, Homer's Iliad and Odyssey and Pindar's Odes are included as sacred texts, as are other works of classical antiquity. These are the core texts that were considered inspiring. Festivals. Various religious festivals were held in ancient Greece. Many were specific only to a particular deity or city-state. There were also the games held each year in different locations, culminating in the Olympic Games, which were held every 4 years. These celebrated Zeus. Morality. One of the most important moral concepts to the Greeks was fear of committing hubris, which constituted many things from rape to desecration of a corpse. It was a crime in the city-state of Athens. Although pride and vanity were not considered sins themselves, the Greeks emphasized moderation. Pride only became hubris when it went to extremes, like any other vice. The same was thought of eating and drinking. Anything done to excess was not considered proper. Ceremonies. Greek ceremonies and rituals were mainly performed at altars. These typically were devoted to one or a few gods and contained a statue of the particular deity upon it. Votive deposits would be left at the altar, such as foods, drinks, as well as precious objects. Sometimes animal sacrifices would be performed here, with most of the flesh eaten and the offal burnt as an offering to the gods. Libations, often of wine, would be offered to the gods as well, not only at shrines but also in everyday life, such as during symposium. Social structure. Greece was made up from independent states called polis. Greek society was essentially broken up between free people and slaves. The slaves were originally owned by the free people and were used as servants and laborers, also leaving them without any legal rights. Occasionally, the slaves were prisoners of war or brought from foreign slave traders. Even though the majority of slaves lived closely with their owners, hardly any were skilled and even fewer were paid. Free men were divided between citizens and metics as the Athenian society evolved. A citizen was born with Athenian parents and were the most influential group that could take part in the government of Polis. Following the mandatory service in the army, they were expected to be government officials and take part in jury service. A metic, on the other hand, was of foreign birth that had migrated to Athens to either trade or practice a craft. They had to pay taxes and were occasionally required to serve in the army. Nonetheless, they could never achieve the full rights of a citizen, own their own houses or land, and were also forbidden to speak in law courts. These social classes only ever applied to men, due to the fact that women took their social and legal status from their male partner. In ancient Greece, women were not permitted to take part in public life. Meaning of life. The purpose of life in ancient Greece is deeply mixed with the philosophical and religious understanding of existence, social ties, consciousness, and happiness. It also touches many other matters including symbolic meaning, value, purpose, ethics, good and evil, free will, perceptions of God, the existence of God, the soul, and the afterlife. The notion can be communicated through a variety of related questions such as why are we here, what is life all about, and what is the meaning of it all. Ancient Greek everyday life. The everyday lives of women in ancient Greece were closely tied to housework, spinning, weaving, and other house duties. They did not partake in public life or in politics. One public duty of a woman in ancient Greece was acting as a priestess at a temple. On the other hand, if not training in military or discussing politics, men went to the theatre for entertainment. It was thought that women were not allowed to watch or perform at the theatre, while male actors did play the roles of women. Storytelling. The ancient Greeks loved stories. They created many marvelous stories, myths, and fables that are still enjoyed today. Marriage weddings. In ancient Athens, wedding ceremonies started after dark. The veiled bride travelled from her home to the home of the groom while standing in a chariot. Her family followed the chariot on foot, carrying the gifts. Friends of the bride and groom lit the way, carrying torches and playing music to scare evil spirits away. During the wedding ceremony, the bride would eat a piece of fruit, symbolizing that food and other basic needs would now come from her husband. Gifts to the new couple would include baskets, furniture, jewelry, mirrors, perfume, and vases filled with greenery. In ancient Sparta, The ceremony was very simple. After a struggle to prove his superior strength, the groom would toss his bride over his shoulder and carry her away.